We'll start with Hortense Tate, who I think you're 100 years old now. Is that right?
Don't tell it.
Don't tell me.
Yes, I am.
And you came to Montclair about 1921, was it?
1921.
And as some of you know, this building, this house, served for a number of years as the headquarters for the YWCA. So Mrs. Tate is very familiar with this house.
I've lived in this building.
Well, you lived in this building, right, okay. I mean in recent years, since they made it into a museum.
We used to go there for dances on Friday nights with all my friends. We had a good time.
I attended the day camp before school. I was like 4 years old. I even saw some pictures, some old pictures of me with some high-top shoes on at the Y.
Mrs. Tate encouraged all of us to go to college. She taught us how to be ladies.
I went there frequently to teas given on a Sunday afternoon.
I'm sure the YWCA was our salvation. We lived in Lynchburg. My mother lived in Lynchburg, and my father, to whom she was married, was still practicing law in Danville. And she didn't want to live in Danville, and he didn't want to move his practice to Lynchburg. And he had a very good friend from Danville who lived in New Jersey, in Newark, had a funeral business, still does. And so he decided to move to Montclair. And that was in 1920, in August 1920.
Work. That's what brought all of them up here, was work. Well, all they could do down south was work in the fields. So they came up to Montclair and work. I think she came up when she was about 16 years old, by herself. Most of the people came by themselves. But she had to stay with someone. My mother did. So she stayed with Charles Morton and Elizabeth Morton. Because her mother wouldn't let her come up here unless she stayed with someone.
I married the guy from Montclair. He came to Howard, and we met at Howard. Well, there was no question he was coming back to Montclair.
My mother was born and raised in Montclair. My father was from Florida and left Florida as a young man and came to New Jersey, and that's where he met my mother.
Newark, it was noisy, and I had little playmates, Fifi and Pinky, and I could run out on the street, and we could run up and down the streets, and there were lots of people. And then when we moved to Montclair, we were in a house that was set back from the road, and it had wild woods all around us. We were in the country. We could hear crickets, and I was afraid of insects, and there were no people around, not like Newark.
My husband was working for RCA, and it was able to travel from here. So that was how we got here. And he was walking up and down the street, and he found these little houses for sale, and it seemed like it would fit our lifestyle, so we were so excited. We were the first in our family to own a house.
Growing up in Montclair, there was only two reasons for living in Montclair. That was because some cousin or aunt or someone had told you to come north because there were good jobs here, and they meant domestic jobs. And other people came because the schools were better for their children, and they weren't segregated, and they didn't want their children raised in a segregated place.
What's generally considered the Great Migration, 1915 to about 1940, over 1 million African Americans left the South to find jobs and homes and opportunity in the North. Certain impulses or pushes from the South, as people say, and pulls from the North that brought people forward. Racial discrimination, economic discrimination in the South, political unrest, and the North looked like the land of opportunity, the promised land.